Well, Steve, here we are. This is here now, and we're into the international negotiations between China and the United States. You were
Yep.
commenting on that.
Yeah, it was I saw some videos from the welcoming ceremony, a major welcoming ceremony when they have the gun salute and the red carpet and the heads of state and the president of the country reviews the military honor guard and they sing the national anthems and all that stuff. Yeah. I saw that maybe 3 days ago. And like I was saying to some colleagues and people who I can talk politics to safely, I said it to you before we went on air. I get that you're going to have diplomatic overtures and procedures when a head of state comes. You know, greet him at the airport, shake his hand or shake her hand, come to the wherever they go to put their luggage and kind of rest a little bit, all that kind of stuff. And I get that all the events are planned. Okay. It's all planned out. Nothing spontaneous probably happens. But when I saw Trump visiting dignitaries and these children were, they're, very nicely dressed, hair, dresses, suits, shoes, very nicely dressed children, maybe age 7 through 10, something like that. And they're here cheering Trump and waving the Chinese and American flag. It just made me sick. Not because I don't think that a country has the right to have a welcoming ceremony. I got that, you know. But less than 2 months ago, on a Saturday morning, the United States bombed a school in Iran, full of children, a little older than that, but still full of girls doing their Saturday morning school. 'Cause most people in the West don't know that in many parts of the world, school is 6 days or 5.5 days, and Saturday in around 1 o'clock. And that's why the girls were at school. They were doing their Saturday morning schooling. And here he is waving at the kids, smiling. This guy has not visited any American schools that I know of since he's been president. He's trying to destroy the school system. Imagine that.
Mhm.
A president of a country trying to destroy its country's school system, and the people are not outraged. That's what gets me. We're not outraged about it. But I was outraged to see these Chinese children welcoming the president. I wish somebody would have come and slapped him. But they were like second grade. They're not going to give a slap the president. Their mom and dad.
Yeah, it was 163 girls who were killed in that strike
Yeah, there you go.
with three missiles, not just one. They're claiming that it was one
No,
mistaken missile, because it used to be part of a, military base.
no.
No way. Three missiles,
Yeah.
and they knew it was a school.
And
And if you
don't
just
and and don't you think that given the same situation, Trump wouldn't bomb a Chinese school? Yes, he would.
mm,
See, I know I'm not so smart. I'm not a genius, no, but I know who I'm dealing with here. So I was just surprised that China would bring its children out to meet a child killer. You can have the ceremony, but the kids aren't going to be here. Why? Well, you just killed some kids you killed students 2 months ago. Kind of wouldn't look too good with our children applauding you. That's what they should have done. And I don't like telling countries, I'm not a head of a state. I don't have a military, a Congress, a Senate, a budget. I'm just some guy somewhere in the world making political commentary. And maybe that is a concession they have to make. I don't think he has made that kind of concession. No, I'm sorry. He just murdered dozens of children on Saturday morning in school. Why do you have your children out there cheering him? They should spit at him. I'm sorry. He's a sick guy. I understand you have to have business with this sick guy. Have your business and leave your children and your women away from him. He's
Mm.
dangerous. I'm sorry. That's how I feel about it, man. It just,
Yeah, yeah,
I understand there's diplomacy. I get that. I get that. I shake hands, smile, fake smile. I understand that. But this man just murdered. He's murdering people in Iran as you're meeting with him.
yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, that's all I gotta say. That's all I gotta say about that. It bothered me seeing these little girls and boys. Their parents are proud of them. We got some good clothes. You know what I'm saying? They wanted the picture. Oh, you visited the president. You're here to maybe 20 years from now they'll be part of the Chinese diplomatic corps. I don't know. I don't know what they'll be. But I feel so harmed. I felt so violated seeing them cheer a man who just a few months ago murdered children at school. Oh, that makes me mad.
I
With
agree
no
with you.
apology, we didn't do nothing. China, Iran has tomahawks too. Oh man, stop lying. Just be
Mm.
quiet. I'm
Mm.
sorry. Just it bothers me. That's all.
It struck me as well, when I saw them walking down the red carpet there, and between two rows of the children waving the American and the
Ooh,
Chinese flag together in their
oh,
hands.
oh,
So that gave the impression that what's going on here? Like, is
yeah.
this China and the United States sort of getting together to divvy up the world and share the world between the two of them,
Well,
become
there's a guy named John Hilmer, and me and John Hilmer, he's an internet analyst, and that's kind of what he thinks is going on.
ah,
That's what he kind of said. They talked about they use Xi Jinping. He was talking about we don't want to have there's a Greek either war or or struggle that we don't want this to happen between us. And I'm going to buy
yeah,
some American oil. Why you want to buy American oil, man?
yeah,
You ain't about American oil. Come
yeah,
on. I don't want you to buy American oil. Cuba can't even get any oil.
yeah,
They're blocking the oil of a country which have no right to do, destroying the economy, destroying the schools, destroying the health of the elderly, destroying the travel. You want to buy some American oil? No, don't buy American oil.
yeah.
I mean, Tim, I'm sorry.
Besides, it's not even American, it's Canadian.
Right, I'm
What
sorry.
the,
Whatever. Yeah, I'm sorry.
when Trump, talks about, America having United States having an oil surplus and exporting oil, it's not true because of the Keystone Pipeline. The Keystone Pipeline,
Right,
which
right.
carries 40% of the oil that's used by the United States, comes from three guesses. Canada, Canada, Canada,
There you go. There
comes
you
from
go.
Alberta, you know. So Alberta, like said, oh well, like they're into the United States of America because they're paying for the oil in Alberta. So they said, well, like the separatist movement in Alberta says, why not quit Canada and just join the United States, and then, there would be no tariffs and all that. So it was taken to court, Supreme Court of Alberta, and the Supreme Court there said, "Oh no, Alberta cannot, uh, decide to leave Canada like that because there are treaties with the Indigenous people covering, most of the land of the
Oh,
province."
thank you. That's so good to hear.
Yes. So,
That's so
like
good to
Alberta,
hear.
cannot decide on behalf of the Indigenous nations, that they're going to be leaving Canada, and handing over the Indigenous land, to the United States of America. No way, no how. So that's settled. And if they do
Good.
try to
I'm glad it's settled because it bothered me. I heard about it and it bothered me that even the thought of joining America would just makes my skin crawl. You
yeah.
lose your health insurance, idiots. Your health program doesn't exist
Yeah,
here. Right there,
really.
it's the dumbest move you could ever make.
Yeah.
Right there, just say no. Then you got the native. The native question really is on top of that question. How dare you even think you can tell native people what to do? That's what has been happening all the time. In Alaska, when it was sold in the United States, stolen from the
Mhm.
United States, the whole Western, his whole United States stolen from native people. Come on. No, no. So that's good. I'm happy to hear that. Really, I
Yeah.
am. Yeah, that's good.
There's it occurs to me just now there's an easy way to stop the war. Very easy way, because the United States, is so proud of being, uh, independent in its oil supply, but they aren't, because they get 40% of their oil supply from Canada. Okay, from Alberta. So, the way to stop the war is just give an ultimatum to the United States of America. Canada could stop the war, say, like, stop the war. Otherwise, you won't have the oil, that you need, to wage the war. We'll cut off the oil. Just, turn off the valve to the Keystone pipeline going south from Alberta, and that's it. You know, United States, shut down. Canada could do that, but not with this government, not with Carney. Carney is, Western banker, first of all, even though he's enlightened. But, the U.S. Autonomy in oil consumption and production is a lie. The United States doesn't have the oil that it needs. It's dependent upon Canada. So Canada could change the whole game, but it's not doing it. Okay, fine. Okay, not for now. But the United States is not in the firm position that it claims to be. The war in Lebanon is continuing. Now 55 villages, are being ordered to be vacated
Oh,
from the
so
southern Lebanon.
Israel is telling the Lebanese to move.
Yeah, about 14% of Lebanon and 55 villages, coming to about 1 million refugees now. They're just telling them, get out. This is going to be occupied now forever. And the Lebanese government, is playing footsie with them in Washington. Ah, boy. No, that's not acceptable either.
It sure isn't. It's really not acceptable. It's absolutely unacceptable. I mean, if there was no, yeah, no, that's listen, I'm sorry, just this it's just like, I don't know, it's just like when it comes to Israel, United States, the UK, this triad of aggressor nations, there's nothing that's off limits. That's all. And if you analyze them with that lens, then it's all understandable. It's not right, it's not correct, but it's understandable. Yeah.
Mhm.
So how much of Lebanon is going to be stolen
14%.
for it. So Lebanon now is 86% of the country is still intact. The rest is going to be wow. And are they
For
planning
now.
to are they planning to put Israeli settlers there and annex it?
There is such a move on already. Yeah. They're not doing it yet, because they can't. And their soldiers are being picked off, one by one by Hezbollah.
They sure are, aren't
So
they? They really are, aren't they?
all, yeah, all the land that they're claiming that is under their control, they don't have control over all that land. They only have control over about a half of the territory that they're claiming up to the Litani River. And then along the eastern part of Lebanon, they claim, to have the right to occupy lands much further north than the Litani River, just on the east side of the Litani River as it turns north. So, but what's worse is Gaza. Still, there's no 600 trucks coming into Gaza every day with provisions and equipment as promised, under the ceasefire. Only 150 trucks are being allowed in a day. And a lot of those trucks, have uh, commercial materials there, so that it's being sold by Israel to local Palestinian gangs that are Zionists, basically, that collaborate with Zionism, and they get favored, to receive the goods that are being brought in, and then they sell it to the Palestinians for an inflated price inside Gaza. So they're setting up this whole sort of, Zionist economy inside of Gaza. because of the limitations, of the provisions, that are being allowed into Gaza in the first place. So all of the provisions stocked, ready, waiting to get in, supplied by the United Nations uh, Relief and Refugee Agency, that relief is not getting in. You know, there's also sort of, announcements, asking for donations from people in the West to pay for provisions to send stuff into Gaza, but the stuff is not getting into Gaza. So it's the point. And it's not being covered either. This is, very
Well, no,
painful
I am.
situation for the Palestinians.
Let me start covering it. Why don't you and I make sure we talk offline and I can start talking about it. I can research it with you. We can do some editorials on different venues. Um, I want this to be covered because this is one of the lies that Israel. You remember during the pre-ceasefire era, how there were videos of the settlers destroying the trucks and taking the food and everything, and
Yeah,
just stealing it or destroying it, intentionally sabotaging efforts to feed people. Well, that's not flying well with me. We have the United States right now cutting off oil to Cuba. That's an attempt to commit genocide against Cubans. People don't, they think I'm too extreme. I'm not extreme. This is what's going on. If I can't fuel my cities and fuel my hospitals and fuel my daycare centers and fuel my businesses, then my country's going to collapse. So when the food is when the supplies are not being gotten to the Palestinians, and that's part of the ceasefire, and somebody's talking about it. We can't let that go unexposed. Okay, so I will work with you
yeah,
on that. We can put something on this program, some features about it.
yeah. Not even Iran is talking about Gaza because Hamas is uh, is a is a protege of Qatar, and Qatar is standing with the United States, to attack Iran. So Iran is not sort of, backing Gaza because it's being led by Hamas, which is an ally of Qatar, which is an enemy of Iran. So Iran, in a sectarian way, is not supporting Gaza because of Hamas. You know, really, that's very disappointing. Uh, Now, after that, the other big problem is the West Bank, where the colonists there are basically taking advantage of their position of having arms and going in and then busting up villages and burning houses and attacking people and forcing them to flee in fear of their lives. And so the village lands are being taken over one by one. And there's no effective resistance against that. And that's not being covered either. So that's what I want to do something about, but I'm not ready yet. Oh boy. So
Okay, so
the
where do the villagers get their guns from? Military, right?
colonists, they get
Yeah.
their guns from Ben Giver, not from the military. The military is supposed to be there, to ensure coexistence. They
Well,
have
you and
the
I
West
know that's
Bank,
a joke.
yeah,
You
yeah.
and I know that's a
But they
joke.
just say so, like they're there, to bring about coexistence, Kogat, they're called. And the military is supposed to be preventing the settler colonists, from attacking the Palestinians. But when they do show up, they just let the colonists, go ahead, and they end up, just protecting colonists against the Palestinians because oftentimes, the military come from the same villages and are assigned to their military duty in the same area as their villages in the first place. So they've got their buddies there amongst the colonists. So they're not going to do anything against them because they're going to have to go back and live with them. Whereas before, the military, would be assigned, to some other area where they didn't have any sort of personal affiliations and they could act under the authority of the military and not be intimidated by their co-fanatics, basically. That's the story there.
How safe is their housing?
Only in Sector A, even in the cities, the Palestinians have a certain security and
Oh no,
guarantee
no.
that the,
Uh, I meant the settlers.
the settlers, have impunity. They're not being confronted in any way. The Palestinians seem to be outmaneuvered. And, the only thing I see the Palestinians in the West Bank doing is, an occasional demonstration of peaceful protest, which doesn't get covered and which gets, shut down pretty quickly. That's about all that I see happening there. Even though there's a movement, of civil disobedience called the Popular Resistance Committees, but they don't have anything going.
So popular resistance committees exist within the West Bank to peacefully protest against the abuses and terror of the settlers.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't call them settlers anymore. I call them colonists.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah, but so there's that. Now, in terms of I've been reading about the Israeli political scene and the Orthodox parties that refuse, military service, but are in the governing coalition with Netanyahu are, they're uh, right-wing racist, like Orthodox, political parties, pro-Zionist. No, they're not pro-Zionist. They're anti-Zionist, but they're in an alliance with the Zionist parties because they get privileges for their members and voters. They get subsidized, to send their youth, to yeshivas, which are like colleges, instead of going out to doing military duty. So they've decided that Netanyahu has been stringing them along, and he promised them a legislation that would protect their non-military status. But Netanyahu was being pressured by others, including the left-wing Zionists, to conscript the Orthodox into the military because they want to share the burden, quote unquote, of military service. Well, the Orthodox parties have decided that they're not going for this anymore. And even though they don't have any allies anywhere else in the array of Israeli political parties, they're still, refusing to back the governing coalition of Netanyahu, which
Okay.
means that the
That's your
government's going to
question.
fall. They can bring down the government, and they're planning to have a new election in mid-September.
Okay, let me ask you
And
a
then,
question. Should
yeah,
we ally, should this broadcast ally with those Orthodox groups? If so, let's get some more news about them. See, I think we're at the point now we have to kind of pick the allies and start promoting what they're doing, interviewing with them, reading their press releases, sharing with our viewers what our allies are doing in um, within that area. I think it's important to do that if we can do it, because any
yeah,
bit of support, any bit of support they can get is useful to them.
yes, they can be allies. The Orthodox can be allies
Yeah.
because they're against military conscription, and that's the fundamental principle. Whether you're willing to go to kill for Zionism, and they're
Right.
not willing to go and kill for
So
Zionism.
that's good. You're not willing
Yeah.
to go do it with Zionism. That's good. Yeah.
And they're very militant. They go and do civil disobedience. They shut down, major highway intersections. They even went to occupy the the home of the Minister of Defense. They went to occupy his home. You know, they were stopped by the military, but still, they're very militant. Like for seemingly passive, like religious fanatics, they're not. They're very militant, and they're, learning politics. Although they, have no sort of political education, they're learning, in practice, who their enemies are. When they get confronted by the police who throw them around, like rag dolls, well, okay, then they know that, the police are not their friends. So, that political awareness is growing. It's planted, it's resilient, it's not going to be defeated, and they're numerous. Like the military tried to conscript 30,000 of the Orthodox, and of those 30,000, the result was, like 2,225 who showed up, for the military conscription. And even then, they had to get through a picket line of the Orthodox trying to stop them from going in, for the military inscription. So, and then, can the state stop them? No, no, they're not able to stop them. They're like more than 20% of the population. And even though they're not voting, they still have this immense political power. The ones who do vote, like end up voting, for the right-wing Orthodox parties, who are nonetheless anti-military. Okay. Now all the rest of them are just sitting there, like boycotting the vote because they're not Zionists. Whew. Now, imagine if they did come out to vote. Imagine if there was a Jewish alternative
Yeah,
that wasn't
that's
Zionist.
my thing because 20% can get some allies and can get to 28%. Yes, they can. They can get some allies. If they have a block of votes and they
Yeah.
vote, if they vote in a block and they get another and some allies to the effect of the other party, if they get 28 to 30%, they can control the election easily.
Yeah. 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 They'd
The
have the balance of
20%,
power. Yeah.
one thing our broadcast has done and other broadcasts don't do, we look at polls. We look at how people vote. We're not just I'm not attacking demonstrations. No, they're important in political struggle. But some people demonstrate and vote. Some people vote and don't demonstrate. Some people demonstrate and vote. And voting is part of the system anywhere in the
Mhm.
world, pretty much. Some kind of voting goes on in some kind of way, unless it's a theocracy, unless they just don't have it set up. And we talk about that. So I think if that's why we can in this program we can have a discussion about blocks and voting and because it's part of the system in many parts of the world and you have to be aware of how to use it and how not to use it.
Yeah.
But I think we're covering good ground here. I'm gonna give you an example of what I mean.
Yeah.
There's a party in the United States called the Peace and Freedom Party. It's in California. It's a pro-socialist party. And they run candidates, and they never win anything, but they run candidates. And I was wondering, and I support them, and I vote for them, even though I thought their slate was kind of weak this year. This
Mm.
this year, it was weak. I won't go into it, but the point was, okay, they're a socialist party. The established Republican and Democratic voters are not going to vote for them because they're a socialist party. So, who should they aim as their electorate? That's something they have to decide. Because the Republican and Democratic strong arms, strong will, as you and I have seen in the polls from Silver, they vote and they are consistent with how they vote. They don't switch over too much.
Mm.
So this party hasn't thought it out. Like, okay, we're going to aim for college students who are just going to get involved in politics. Fine. We're going to try and find those who don't vote, get involved in voting. Fine. But have a strategy. So it sounds like the Orthodox in Israel can have a strategy that might be able to influence future elections, to me.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think so. If they're
Yeah.
20%, you can get 29% in the vote, and the country's going to be run by you. Yes, oh, yes, again.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, in France, there's an example of how to organize now. Because in the last election, finally, the French left, has formed a united front, and they have a very big coalition that is probably bigger than even the right wing, uh, RN, Rassemblement National of the fascists. But the media, they only talk about the right-wing fascist parties as being in the ascendancy. They never talk about the left-wing coalition that was the largest political party in the last election. And even though they were the party that received the greatest number of votes, the President Macron refused to call upon them to form a government. He called upon, some other sort of uh, elements, to form a government in opposition to the left-wing United Front coalition. And two of those governments fell. And who knows what's going on, like now. But this, United Front is called a New Popular Front because after the Second World War, there was a popular front, including communists in the cabinet who formed the government, the supposedly left-wing coalition, but it was catering to the preservation of the national bourgeoisie, who were considered to be an ally. And that's why it was called a popular front rather than a united front, because it was a multi-class coalition, and it failed. Now, the task and the lesson to be learned is that a united front is what's necessary, because it's a fundamental change that is required, and not some reforms, superficial reforms that are tethered to and limited by the national bourgeoisie. So now we have a united front in France, poised to take the elections and take the government over. And the same thing can be set up in the United States. You have the Peace and Freedom Party. You have the Democratic Socialists of America. You have the Green Party. You have all the other splinter, like left-wing formations. And then you have the grand coalitions of mobilization. All of these can be put together into a united front. And they can put forward, they can endorse the candidates, that that correspond to their program. Develop a program. Whoever supports this program gets endorsed by this United Front coalition, even if they're, won a primary, for the Democratic Party. And then, split off, those section of the Democratic Party that they're compatible with, and form a new, broader coalition that is bigger than the Democratic Party, and then eventually can take over the government. This is what can be happening in the United States, but I don't see any moves to that effect. Is there anything, like United Front being formed up, for, I know there's, like various individuals that are progressives that are contesting the primaries for the Democratic Party nominations for the upcoming midterm elections. But what about a United Front endorsing such candidates and those candidates endorsing the alternatives, to the Democratic Party's reactionary candidates? So the
Well,
left-wing Democratic candidates should be supporting the Green candidates, let's say, who are running against the Democratic Party candidate,
I
who is a
agree.
reactionary.
I agree. There has been some movement um, in that direction by a few groups. Um, I've seen a few groups grow in that milieu, and they now are doing what you're suggesting. They are doing it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've seen one, two, a few. I'd even say among the genuine working class, labor class militants, that is the dominant trend. I can say that
Mhm.
without trying to make it up or make them look good. And above
Mhm.
among those who are more ideological, that's not the trend. So for those who organize at schools and go out in the community, pass out thumb cards, try to organize strikes, that section of the left is doing that now. There's been,
Mhm.
for example, um, in Washington State, Shama Sawant, former leader of Socialist Alternative, is running a campaign for U.S. Congress against a right-wing Democrat in Seattle. And
Mhm.
most of the left parties in Seattle and around the country support her. It is
Mhm.
a united front to support her candidacy. Um, I've been seeing groups like the Spartans League, which at one time would not touch politics. They've moved to the left and now are doing that. So I DSA is contested ground because DSA wants to hold on to its pro-democratic party orientation, even though many people in it are not pro-democratic party.
Mhm.
I just from what I see, um,
Mhm.
the vanguard groups, PSL, Spartacus League, groups like United Front for Labor Party, other groups like that, they are on the United Front orientation. You might not hear
Mhm.
about them. It's not low key. As a matter of fact, I'll even take it further than that. The fact that May Day this year, you had labor unions supporting May 1st as a Labor Day is a kind of a watershed moment. May
Mhm.
1st in the United States has been rejected by the American labor movement as a workers' day. The workers' day is Holy Labor Day. You go out to picnic and eat hamburgers and hot dogs.
Mhm.
So you have for about 20 years, there's been a movement, 15, 20 years in larger cities to make May 1st first an immigrant day. That was the dominant force. And in some cities, that's still the dominant force. They still can't get the labor to unite
Mhm.
with May 1st. It was more of an immigrant rights day. But this
Mhm.
year, you did see labor in some parts of the country, the official labor unions on May
Mhm.
1st having
Mhm.
marches. That was and
Wow.
even Fox News, Trump's
Mhm.
news media said, why are all these communists in the streets? They knew what was going on. They said this. Fox News, where are these communists coming from? So you are seeing, and that was the United Front.
Yeah.
So I'm not patting him on the back because I want to pat him on the back. I've said this in some meetings, but I haven't got any response when I make that statement. It was a major. It's now. See, so now if you're in a smaller local, let's say you're in a area where you have a teacher union, a carpenters union, electrical workers union, you can say, hey, May 1st last year in Fresno or in Bakersfield or in Olympia or Tacoma, they had a march. Why are we going to have a march this year? Because there were marches this year throughout the country.
Mhm.
So that's something, like I said, there has been a movement
Mhm.
among some leaders of service worker unions, um, 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 dock worker unions, teacher unions, and also there have been some strikes in mostly in California, teacher strikes, which has led to
Mhm.
this kind of militant. So, you know, I can't say it's a dominant trend, but I can say just looking at actual facts, not political facts, that
Mhm.
there has been some movement in that direction, which is good.
Mhm. Wow.
I can't say that. There's splits on the Mandami movement in New York. There are splits. Chicago, I think it was Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle. It's mostly West Coast, but there are some places around the country where this united front is occurring. And labor May 1st has begun to transition from an immigrant rights group, an immigrant rights day in some cities to now a labor and immigrant rights day, which is, I think, an important development with the U.S. political scene. And Fox News attacked it. They saw what was
Wow.
going on.
Wow. Oh, you're so right. Yeah, very important development.
Yeah.
And it should be growing, because Zohar Mandani in New York has successfully brought about a increase in taxation on the rich to pay for all the 1,000 new teachers that he's hired, for the educational system in New York.
Well, this is so interesting because let me
Hmm.
say something about that. That's a very interesting development, which nobody's heard about, by the way. I'm just hearing it from you right now.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm hearing from right now. There is opposition to Mondami's okay, Chicago and New York have mayor-controlled school districts. Most cities have school board controlled school districts. And most of the left, or many left groups, want Mondami to create a school board. I said, what difference does it make? As long as we get what we want, that's what you want. Because you might have seven people on the school board, and then you have to have a block and who's going to work for us. No. Since Mondami's in power, drop that as a demand right now. If he hires some teachers, right on. Because what's happening around the country, my friend, they're laying off teachers.
Mm.
Thousands. Thousands will have to leave the profession after next month. Because they won't, and they have one or two openings. If
Mhm.
Mondami's hiring teachers, more, thank you, Mr. Mondami.
Yeah.
Because other parts of the country, they're not hiring teachers. No, they are not. They're letting them go. And then
Mm.
in August or May, July, they'll say, "Oh, we can't find teachers. We have to hire substitute teachers." They'll
Mm.
make up this lie. We can't find teachers. We have to sign a document with the education board. We have to now allow us to hire people who don't even have credentials to teach when they've laid off thousands. And the unions
Mm.
aren't even keeping track of who's being laid off. I mean, thousands. Two, 200 here, 300 here, 300 here. That's 1,000 right there.
Mm. Mm.
So Mandami hiring teachers, thank you. That came from struggle too. He didn't do it out of some benevolence. But if he's going to hire teachers, we need teachers hired because they're laying them off across the country. Yes, they are. I'm telling you right now.
Mm.
People will be leaving the profession next month because they can't find a job. They got to pay their bills. They have no health insurance. They have no income. They have unemployment, which is like one fifth of their income they get if they're laid off. So they got to work somewhere. They're
Mm.
probably losing their houses and lose their houses and their apartments. They're probably going to probably be moving with some friends and
Mm.
sleeping in their car.
Mm.
Yes,
Oh.
yes, it's going to happen. No one's going to talk about it, but that's
How
what's going to
much do
happen.
teachers get paid in the States, by the way?
It depends. It's usually it's in the low end of or it ranges from average of let's say 100,000 in California to 45,000 in the South.
Wow, 45,000.
Oh yes,
That's like poverty.
it is poverty, and that's why those teachers are always married. They're always married
Hmm.
because if you're not married, you just can't live.
Wow. Hmm.
Yeah, teacher pay is very. New York City is the second highest in the country. Their average is about 95,000.
Hmm.
Which is not a lot of money in the United States. People think, oh, a lot of money. No, it really isn't.
Hmm.
You might be able to pay for a car and an apartment or a house, and that's about it. You can't have any
Yeah.
credit cards. No, you
Yeah. Without
can't.
a transportation system there, you have to have your own transportation system to get to work. So
There
you
you
have to
go.
pay
That's right.
from your own salary
Yes,
the cost of getting to work in the first place.
yes.
It's
And gasoline prices have gone up 33%. So me
oh
in
yeah, I
my
was going to
situation,
ask you. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I
California's
mean,
in difficulty, because California doesn't get American oil. California, I heard, was getting its oil from Iran, and now that's cut off.
right, and now was the right. I heard that from this guy interview on the internet. So we're expecting another price hike very soon.
Yeah.
Because
Uh-huh.
right now, the Shell and Chevron and Mobil and Go and Mobil, they're charging, they're way over six. They're 650, 670, 625 a gallon. The other ones are 580, 540, 590 a gallon. So it's hard to
Uh-huh.
find any gasoline in California that's less than 550 a gallon. And remember, a month and a half ago, the average price was 485, 460. We're talking about $1.25 more a gallon, which is 30% increase.
Uh,
So
and that's the maximum that it's ever been, even during the pandemic.
right, right. Oh yeah.
So, and it's geared to go even higher
Oh
now.
yeah. It's unless something is done. Diesel is $7 a gallon.
Whoa.
Diesel is advertised 750, 745, 715. Diesel fuel is not $6 a gallon. No, it's 750 a gallon. So the truckers are really paying out, which is going to raise everything they transport is going to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything in a truck is going up in price. Period. That's it.
Okay, so there should be motivation there of peoples to look for an alternative in a
Um,
united front. The united front has to be ready, to capture the attention of the people and give them an alternative. If there is no alternative presented, then they'll get manipulated into,
yep, fascist
in, uh,
politics.
targeting some sort of, facade that is used, to you know, blame all the difficulties on somebody else. The first target, of course, is the migrants. Somehow the migrants are are
Well,
basing, the standard of living of everybody else for some reason, when in fact, they're the ones, working as cheap labor, to provide people with food on their plates.
Abraham, there are 70,000 migrants locked up in ICE facilities around the country.
Oh,
70,000. I keep track of them. Every week I get a report.
uh-huh.
70,000. They're just in no trial, poor health conditions, poor food, just because they're migrants. So they've
Mhm.
gotten rid, believe me, I'm not saying all migrants are gone or all I think they're really refugees myself, but that's just my view of the migrant, what's really going on with the migrants. Many left. Many said, I'm out of here. I'm just gonna go back home.
Hmm.
'Cause I'm not gonna be going to jail. I'm not getting in that prison. I'm gonna go back home.
Uh-huh.
Many just took off.
But the number of undocumented refugees, immigrants, was, I heard, 11 million. So 70,000.
That's well, I don't know. I don't know that. I doubt the accuracy of that number. The reason I'm
Uh-huh.
saying that because they really have been searching people. They've been running people, and the industries that hired them, the meat packing, I mean the industries, meat packing, agriculture still has legal migration. They kind of they took care of that. So they may
Uh,
be hired, and those who are here now, their status is they got to get the status right because ICE is coming after them. They're not playing around. They're not. So
uh,
they may have had some status. They may have on behind closed doors got the status or changed the status from undocumented to documented, or they have to leave and come back. But many people took off. They left.
mhm,
They said, this,
mhm,
I'm not going to these immigrant prisons being held different. I can just go back home. And there are
mhm,
buses that will take them back home. You can get a commercial bus that runs the Mexico route, TJ, Guadalajara, like San Diego, Fresno. There's buses that are based on Latin America to the U.S., from Mexico to the U.S. There are bus lines. And when the bus
mhm,
line leaving, going back, nobody checks that bus line at all. No, I mean there are these little bus companies offices in
mhm,
mostly Latinx communities. And you want to go back home, just get on the bus. And I'm not gonna stop you.
mhm,
ICE doesn't go there. No, ICE
mhm.
doesn't go to those places because they know people are leaving. They pretty much leave them alone.
I read as well that they're using the AI program Palantir
Yep,
to
volunteer.
figure out, which people are undocumented because of the use made of either school registrations or hospital registrations or anything like that. They collect all that data and they you know do a comparative analysis to see, who's got, immigrant registration and all that. And then they
Oh,
find out, where their home is, and then they go directly to their home and pick them up, from their home. They're not, doing amateur stuff, going to a meat packing place, and
yeah.
checking on all the workers, just, by
Well,
chance, that they're going to find somebody. No, they're going to the identified immigrants who have applied, for legal status, but who have been, just, delayed and delayed, until they don't. don't have, the completed, registrations, and they get picked up at their homes and taken out. So, this is very serious and very powerful reactionary demographic. Uh, they're using demographic engineering, to create a white nation state. This is what their
Well,
purpose is.
that's what they want to do. And when it comes to that white nation state, one thing we didn't talk about, and maybe we can talk about next week more, is the use of destroying the Voting Rights Act and the U.S. Supreme Court to
Mm,
dilute black and brown voting districts in the House of Representatives, in the Congress of the states, the state congresses, and um, yeah, it hasn't been allied. I think, a decent analysis of it. Next week we can talk about it more because they want to make a white nation, but since they can't make a white nation because it isn't a white nation, they can
mm,
change the way voting is done so that if you have MAGA as a counter-revolutionary force against integration, against democracy, even democracy of the Democratic Party type, if that's a dominant force, then what you want to do is dilute the ability of the other force to even have power. And in one way, the other force was focused on voting. That was the civil rights movement, voting and equal rights. And Trump took away equal rights in housing with his attack on DEI for the federal government. He took it away. He just took it away. Just said, I am getting rid of it. It shouldn't have been that easy to get. It should be a constitutional amendment. It should be
mm,
part of the Constitution. The equal rights are part, but apparently he's found a way around that. So we can talk about that next time because the white
mm,
nation myth is um, is concretized in how voting is done. That's how the country does voting and hiring and employment. Voting and employment is how if they can fire you for no reason, give you low paying jobs, and make sure that you vote when they can steer the vote, especially in the former Confederacy, Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, those states. That's where the focus is, not in the northern states, but in the southern states where they have the Confederacy. So they still have a southern KKK approach, still to this day.
mm,
180 years. Let me see, it's 1880, 1980, 140 years after the destruction of the Confederacy. That still is their orientation.
mm,
The Confederate white supremacist orientation when it comes to voting.
mm,
And our broadcast talks about voting. It's not just all about the demonstrations. No, there is a voting aspect of power holding that this country is based on, especially in the South.
mm.
And that's why they want to get
Something.
rid of these. They want to make sure that black votes in the South are diluted so they can win elections. They can't
Uh-huh.
force you out to move. They can't get you to move. What has changed the way that the districts are made so that your vote will never allow even a token black person, a token Latin American person to be in Congress. We don't want you here. That's
Yeah.
Republican Party's approach. We don't want you we don't want you to be seen, yet alone empowered. So we're gonna make sure you're
Yeah.
not even seen by
Yeah.
redistricting the voting districts so that even if all blacks turn out, we're gonna hope that the whites vote with us because they're white. And that's how they do it. I know it from
Yeah.
my first personal experience living in these regions. Not from
Yeah.
reading a book, but by knowing how they do it firsthand. Okay. So the goal there is to split the white vote. You got to get
Yeah.
whites who are younger and who can have some political views that are not racist to vote against that stuff. Unless
Yeah.
you do that, unless you get the whites to vote against you, because I know they won't do it in general. You have to convince them, the college educated whites, the ones who have working class whites who work with black and Latin people, that you can't vote
Uh,
for this. This is against your interests. If you can't do
yeah.
that, it's over. And that's
Wow.
what they want. They want it to be over.
Mhm.
That's it.
I should explain that this is called a gerrymandering,
Oh
in
yeah,
which the majority areas of black population are cut up like into sections of a pie, and one section is placed in the midst of a majority white
that's it.
constituency,
Yes,
and the other piece is put into another constituency, which is majority white as well,
right,
et cetera, so that there's no constituency that is majority black anymore.
right. Yes, yes. That's how they do it. That's how they do it.
Yeah.
So in this from 1960 through 2000, I say 2010, there were movements. Let's say in Greensboro, North Carolina, or somewhere. Let's say Carolina. The voting rights issue was very big in the Carolinas. Let's say a city like Greensboro. You have about 25%, 35% black people at the time, and no blacks in the city council, no blacks in the state legislature, none because of
Mm,
that. So it's the NAACP and other groups. And remember, the target of the KKK was the NAACP. People forget about that.
mm,
Okay? The target of the Republicans was the NAACP. Okay. So the NAACP would bring lawsuits based on the Voting Rights Act to challenge how the districts were drawn. That's how the playbook was played out. So the Voting
mhm,
Rights Act was used as a lever to make the states, to make the counties, to make the cities create districts that could have a black representative. That's how it was done.
mhm.
So when you get rid of the Voting Rights Act, or take away its power, they can say, well, you know what? There's no history of discrimination here. You can't prove it. So therefore, we're not going to go to this. We're not going to take this our district to the Justice Department for approval. You had to take all the districts to the Justice Department for approval. The way we're set up now with the gerrymandering, they don't have to do that.
Mhm.
That's how
Mm,
they're quote getting away with it. That's the
mhm,
method of getting them changed and the method of getting away from it. The method of getting away from it is the Supreme Court's rule that we don't have to do it like this. Voting Rights Act doesn't mean this. It means this instead. So therefore, if I'm in Louisiana, if I'm in Arkansas, if I'm in these states where historically they diluted black voting strength since the destruction of the Confederacy, remember 150 years ago, it's still holding
mm.
on to that. Okay,
Yeah,
they
yeah.
still want the South to be white and plantation controlled. So that's
Mm,
how they do it, man. And very few
mhm,
people will tell it to you like that. That's how it works.
mhm.
Like you said,
So
yeah, like you said.
next week, let's talk about how to get organized to get over that, to counteract
Okay, yeah,
that whole system. Okay, we'll figure out, like what the strategy is, for the upcoming elections. Because, to sort of dismiss the elections as being a Democratic Party game is not enough.
true.
It's an
I agree.
opportunity that we have to sort of intervene in and not simply, s- let pass by as if it's a default condition. No, if we accept that as a legitimate representation, of the people, then you've given up, and we
Right,
don't give up.
right.
Never.
Sounds good. Well, I want to thank everybody for um, staying on during the broadcast, and if you're listening to us later on in the day, not quitting and not going somewhere else. We need you to like and share and give comments and get involved in the struggle. Because we don't just report the news. We want you to be involved in activism and bringing an end to the system we have now because another way of living is possible and is necessary.
Yeah, yeah. So we need to think, analyze, and act.
Right. There we go.
Okay.